actual impact, it's actually the alarms and the sound of the alarms. It says that we're live now.
We just went live, yeah. Well, Jonathan, It's a pleasure to speak to you, and appreciate you giving us the time.
Thank you.
Pretty extraordinary circumstances. Now, you don't work with the IDF anymore. I think you were a spokesperson a few years ago. Is that correct?
That is correct. I served in the IDF for 24 years. My last 4 years, I was the IDF's international spokesperson. In the summer of 21, I concluded my service. And since then, I've been doing other things. I deal in communications, strategic communications, PR, and public speaking. And I'm currently a senior fellow at an American think tank called FDD, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And when things are happening in Israel and when we're attacked by terrorists and we're retaliating against Iran, I do a lot of media trying to explain an Israeli perspective to viewers around the world and to provide insight and sometimes try to get balance in how Israel is covered in international media.
What was your initial reaction when you saw the attack 2 days ago? It was a surprise to many outside of Israel, probably with your contacts or with your being a senior fellow at the, I think it's the DD or FDD?
FDD, yeah.
FDD, so that gives you a lot of insight. Does that, despite your, your experience at the IDF and your existing experience with the FDD, did that still come as a surprise to you? Was that expected? And how do you compare it to what happened with Hezbollah in terms of success?
Yeah, no, it's been in the making many months, one would say years. It wasn't a surprise. We could feel it coming. I had various people telling me that it was indeed coming. And a few hours before the attack, I was made aware that it was going to happen and told to be prepared in terms of personal safety, anticipating a rapid Iranian response, but also in order to get ready to be able to communicate. What was surprising was, however, the tremendous success of the attack and what Israel was able to achieve in the opening move against the Iranian regime to take out most of the supreme military command of the Iranian armed forces, the Revolutionary Guard Air Force, their air defenses, cyber, rocket units, and also the Iranian army, and 9 very important nuclear scientists that have been on the radar for decades. That was surprising. And I think it was a surprise because I thought the Iranians were very smart and cunning, and I was surprised that they were tricked into this false sense of security. And I think there was quite significant deception on behalf of Israel and perhaps indirectly the US as well, that led the Iranians to believe that they're safe. They can go about their daily business of promoting terror organizations around the world, attacking Israel, and of course building a nuclear weapon. And as long as there's negotiations ongoing, they won't be touched by Israel. And Israel changed that. And that was surprising to see, just the speed, success, scope of the attack. And of course, very happy with it.
There's been reports, and that's completely unverified, but I want to get your thoughts on it and how possible it is for it to be accurate. There's been reports that how there was a leak, allegedly the Iranian intelligence was able to get a lot of files, a lot of classified documents from Israel relating to their nuclear facilities or other military intelligence. There's been reports that those documents were actually planted by Israel, and they allowed Israel to track the whereabouts of Iranian scientists and military officials. I'm not sure if you've heard these reports, and I'm not sure if you know if they're true or not, or more importantly, how possible it is that they are true if you're not aware of whether they're accurate or not.
Yeah, I've heard it. I'd say that it's not impossible because there is a multi-dimensional game of chess being played between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the State of Israel, and to many extents, the US and to a certain extent, European countries as well. But it's really a mind game and a physical battle between Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran. And there's measures and countermeasures and countermeasures. I cannot verify what you say, but I can say that Israel uses a very wide variety of tools at its disposal in order to undermine, slow, and limit Iran's nuclear program. Up until 2 nights ago, what Israel did was less kinetics, less use of actual force, and more use of cyber tools. Occasionally, yes, the Mossad has has eliminated scientists and senior generals in Iran on Iranian soil, and we've had cyber attacks, but by and large, up until 2 nights ago, this was all in the very covert domain. And what you refer to, which can or cannot be true, is more in that domain. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Mossad was indeed able to do such a thing and to kind of trick the Iranians into believing that they have a treasure trove of information, which then turned out to be a Trojan horse in the information sense. But I cannot establish it. But what definitely is, what I think we can say beyond any doubt, is that the Iranians have been totally and completely penetrated by Israeli intelligence. The fact that Israel was able to take out in various different locations in Tehran and other cities the entire or almost the entire supreme command of the Iranian defense establishment is unprecedented. Never happened in any other war between two sides that so many senior officers were taken out simultaneously by a country which, of course, it should be clear to the Iranians that Israel had intention to do so. But really what the Mossad has done over the years is to establish infrastructure, networks, enablers, facilitators, agents, collaborators on the ground in Iran. And the Mossad has been working primarily on this for many, many years. I could even say decades, as in 2 decades. And now the beauty of it is that now all of this was deployed in real time when Israel needed it, and it was deployed with significant success on the battlefield. I can't hear you, Mario.
So that question already is like, I wanted to ask, how is that possible? Like the success we saw against Hezbollah shocked the world. The pager attack was astonishing, and the ability to wipe out the entire chain of command at Hezbollah. But no one expected the same thing to be done in Iran, and at such a speed. So we've had reports of Mossad having commandos on the ground in Iran. Also, there's been reports about an explosive drone base, an actual base inside Iran that was built by Israel, allowing them to manufacture drones. Other reports point to a similar strategy done by Ukraine and Russia, driving trucks with drones, smuggling them into Iran, and allowing Israel that success. Because just a couple of hours ago, we had another drone strike on the police headquarters in Iran. So, 2 questions. First is, you've already answered how. Second is, do you think there's a lot more that Israel could do? Have they just done all their resources have just gone on that first day? They've given it their all, and now it's just continuing strikes from the air as they have air dominance?
No, I think that would be wrong to assume that Israel has exhausted its capabilities. Far from it. What Israel did through the Mossad, Special Forces, Intel, and Air Force was to penetrate Iran, the country. And again, for people who are not so familiar with the geography, we're talking about approximately 1,200 kilometers distance between Israel and Tehran. The eastern parts of Iran are 1,500 kilometers away, and the border is around 700 kilometers away. And Iran is, of course, a vast country, larger than Germany, larger than France, the UK, and many other countries, and Israel is a very small country, and it's a long distance in between. But what Mossad was able to do was to establish that network and have it ready. I wouldn't want to go into details how Israel got the drones there, but Israel did indeed prepare and assemble drones on Iranian soil and then deploy them when they were needed. But what you're seeing now, including as we are speaking, are Israeli strikes in Tehran, various targets that are affiliated with essentially 3 things. 1, Revolutionary Guard, which is the branch of the Iranian defense establishment that is the most important, most powerful, the most brutal. It is the branch that has been exporting violence all over the Middle East and conducting terrorist attacks, whether it's in Yemen, in Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, and of course all of those aimed against Israel. So we're attacking the Revolutionary Guard, all of their facilities, or many of their facilities in Tehran. Israel is attacking facilities that are related to the nuclear program, research centers, different facilities where the Iranian nuclear program is promoted, the civilian parts of it, and of course the military parts of it. And that's happening as well. And third, Israel has started in a very small and precise way also to strike depots of fuel that is used by the military. So Israel has not yet crossed that very important Rubicon to start attacking national infrastructure, oil and gas in Iran, which I think is just around the corner. We're not there yet, but that I think is the next stage if Iran continues to fire at Israel. Israel hasn't started doing that yet, but that is those are the three types of targets. That is enabled by the fact that Iranian air defenses have been blown out of the sky. Iran today is exposed, and the Iranians continue to fire ballistic missiles at Israel. Last 24 hours, we had 10 civilian casualties. 10 people were killed in Israel, all of them civilians, by incoming ballistic missiles from Iran. And Israel is striking military targets in Iran. And I think where we're standing now is just at the cusp of this conflict going to a second level, a level where I think Iranian national infrastructure will be front and center of Israeli targeting.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the footage now of the blast that we saw. I'll just put here just the one you're referring to as we were speaking on Tehran on a missile base, I think a missile storage site. Now you said you made a point about Israel will start striking Iran's oil refineries. Before I continue, Jonathan, I'm not sure if there's any other, because the audio is perfect, but throughout this whole interview, your video is choppy. Now we have it recorded locally, so we'll be able to repost clips that are perfect quality, but the live stream, the video quality has been bad. Not sure if it's a camera or the internet connection. Do you want to give it like 30 seconds to see if you can fix it before we continue? In the meantime, I'll let you give it a shot. If there's nothing you can do, that's fine. In the meantime, I'm just going to update the audience here. We've got the Israeli chief of staff said we've paved the way to Tehran. So the offensive moves we are taking in Iran are changing the strategic reality of the state of Israel. We are removing an existential threat and establishing our security. The IDF, through the Air Force, has completed paving the way to Tehran and is precisely and extensively striking the regime's infrastructure and nuclear program in a way that the enemies never imagined. The defense and home front effort is crucial. So that's the one update there. We've got Boris Johnson said, Israel's doing the world a huge service. Why isn't the UK saying what everybody knows? That was just a few minutes ago. We also have the footage of the strike that happened in Tehran as we were speaking. And lastly, and we're going to talk about it in a bit, is Trump. So Rachel Scott from ABC said the following. She said, I asked Trump about the reports that Israel urged the Trump administration to join the war with Iran to eliminate its nuclear program. And then she says, Trump said, we're not involved in it. It's possible we could get involved, but we are not at this moment involved. That's what Trump said to Rachel less than an hour ago. So Jonathan, how important is it for the US to get involved in this? Israel seems to be doing pretty well, but we also know that they've struck 2 nuclear facilities. They haven't struck Fordo, which is about 800 meters underground. And they reports say that they cannot strike it with the resource they have. You do need the bunker busting bombs, the GBU-57 from the US to be able to strike Fordo nuclear facility. Can Israel achieve its mission without the US's support? Is Israel trying to get the US support? I think Netanyahu officially requested the US to join. And do you think the US will join if Iran does not strike military bases, American military bases?
No, you're very correct. This is where we stand now. That is the next stage, and that's the big question. Will the US join in, and will the US deliver the final and most substantial blow against Iran's nuclear weapons program? My assessment, I'm not 100% sure. In terms of interests, I think that it would serve American interests. I think that it would, finally set back the Iranian nuclear program many, many years, if not totally. Without it, I agree with what you say. There's what Israel has done and will continue to do eventually will be limited by the ordnance available. Now, like the old saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and Fordo is indeed not the amount of meters that you said. It's less than 100 meters, but it is deep underground. It is protected, and it's a hardened target. But that too can be attacked by Israel without having bunker busters. It's a matter of, I won't go into the details, but it is also possible. I think that from a political perspective, Israel prefers not to be going at it alone. Referring to what Boris Johnson said, which I think is important, I'm happy to see that the three biggest and important countries in Europe, France, UK, and Germany, are supportive of Israel. I would like to see a little bit more enthusiasm with the UK and with France. I think Israel is, like many times before, doing the dirty work for the West, and Israel is not getting the proper support and credit for doing it. I think Israel has single-handedly over the years been a more active non-proliferator than any UN watchdog. Israel has taken care of 2 nuclear weapons programs in the hands of Arab tyrants in the past. 1981, Osirak in Iraq, Saddam Hussein was very close to achieving nuclear weapons capabilities. Israel stopped that. In 2007, Israel stopped the nuclear program of the Arab Republic of Syria under the Assad family, and made sure that they were not going to have nuclear weapons either. And those steps were not very popular at the time. And Israel was criticized for taking out the nuclear reactor in Osirak, even by our closest ally, the US. In hindsight, and a few years after, of course, what Israel did was good for peace, for stability. When you deny weapons of mass destruction from crazy tyrants that have extremist motivations to kill lots of people, you're doing a good thing, even though you're using violence and even though you are attacking someone else. And I wish that European countries would be seeing that exactly in that sense. And last thing that I'd like to add, if possible, the Russian connection. What Israel is doing is weakening Russia. Israel is weakening Russia's capacity to continue to fire ballistic missiles and drones at Ukraine by weakening the Iranian defense establishment and the Iranian military industry. Iran has been supplying missiles and drones, advanced missiles and drones, to Russia, and Russia has been using them against Ukraine. What Israel is doing in Iran today is indirectly strengthening Ukraine and doing Europe a favor, but because it is weakening Russia. So again, my perspective as an Israeli who many times faces criticism and many times is singled out for, I think, quite harsh treatment in the media and diplomatically, what I would expect European countries to be saying in various languages would be thank you, danke, merci, and many other things, which I think Israel should be given, and Israel should be given support, unequivocal, full support by the European countries, because Israel is doing the dirty work for those countries.
Why not wait till Sunday? Why not wait to these negotiations between US and Iran? Some are saying that US and Iran were close to reaching a deal. Trump was very optimistic about those negotiations prior to the attack. And the argument that's being made there is Israel was not happy with that deal, and Israel thought it was not enough, and that's why they struck the targets on I think it was Friday.
Friday, yeah, you're correct, Friday. I think they were not close to making a deal. And a small detail was that the President of the United States gave an ultimatum. He gave it to the Iranians 63 days ago. He said, I give you, the Iranians, 60 days, 2 months to negotiate, and I will do everything I can in order to bring this about in a peaceful way. I, President, prefer this to go down the peaceful way. But the Iranians thought that they could draw out negotiations and that they could do. And by the way, they are excellent and I say this with the most simple intentions, without cynicism, the Iranians are excellent at negotiating. They are four-dimensional chess players, and they do it very well. They've been doing it very well for many years, but now they ran out of runway. Basically, what the US said, what President Trump and his team said was, we are not going to allow you to enrich any material on Iranian soil. Why? Because we don't trust you. Why? Because you've been hiding and obfuscating and obstructing the work of international supervisors before. And if Iran can enrich on Iranian soil, they will have enough material to enrich in order to achieve a bomb. And we're not going to allow it. You, Iran, are not going to have nuclear weapons, period. Now, if Iran would have come and said, okay, we don't like it, it's not what we want, but okay, we understand that now is really business time, and we're going to agree to it. Then there would have been a deal, and it would have been quick, and I think that President Trump actually preferred that. But they didn't. They thought that they can continue to obfuscate, and I think a very important milestone was the Atomic Agency report that came out just a day and a half before Israel's strike, which says very clearly, by the way, it is a groundbreaking, unprecedented report by the highest levels of the Board of Governors of the Atomic Agency, saying very clearly the Iranians are not in compliance with their obligations. They are hiding, they are lying, and that they have enough enriched uranium to produce 10 nuclear bombs. And that, I think, was the last straw. If you ask why Israel attacked, that was the last straw that made it unequivocally clear that Iran was indeed sprinting towards a bomb, and that from an existential point of view, Israel needed to take action.
One thing Israel said, and your current spokesperson Nadav Shoshani said the same thing in my interview 2 days ago, is that Iran was days away from a nuclear weapon. But Israel's been saying this for a long time. Do you really think Iran was that close to having a nuclear weapon?
I don't know. I don't know. I know it's been said by Israeli officials, by the Prime Minister, and by many others. I don't know, because I don't see raw intel, and I don't understand enough about nuclear physics and advanced metal and applied sciences. I know that the Iranian regime wants a nuclear weapon. And I know that the Iranian regime wants to annihilate the state of Israel. Those are two clear things that I know. About the timing, it could be that it's imminent, just days, and it could be that it would take them longer. From my perspective, it's less important, because the two first things that I know, and they are confirmed, that they want to destroy Israel and that they're trying to achieve nuclear weapons, they in themselves are enough for Israel to take preemptive action in order to defend itself. So whether the timing is a week, a month, or more than that, I think it's impossible to verify. You'd have to get the former head of the nuclear program on a chair, interrogate him, and then he would be able to say, oh yes, we were indeed a week away or a month away. Other than that, who knows? It's a complex process, but what we do know, based on what the Atomic Agency is saying, what US intelligence suggests, what Israeli intelligence suggests, is that they were indeed sprinting towards it. And I think this triggered a lot of fear in Israel that we have to take action now, otherwise it will definitely be too late.
You also talked about Russia weakening. How involved could Russia get, or even China? So Iran is part of BRICS. The Belt and Road Initiative goes through. Iran is very involved in that. And Russia has also got a defense pact with Iran. Could they sit back and watch Israel destroy Iran's capabilities for the next couple of weeks without being involved in any way?
The short answer is, I think that they will. I think Russia for its reasons and China for its reasons. Russia is, as you know very well from your reporting and how you've covered the situation in Ukraine, Russia is tremendously preoccupied with trying to fight against Ukraine. And I don't think that they have any resources to spare, even though Russia is a superpower with lots of resources. But in terms of military and fighting capabilities, I don't think that Russia has the capacity to start fighting in the Middle East, especially not when the Iranians are losing. It would be a totally different endeavor for the Russians to join in a winning fight. But this is, from a Russian perspective, really a steep climb. The current situation, militarily speaking, from an Iranian and Russian perspective, that would be a very, very steep climb. And I don't think that Russia would have an interest in doing so. And the Russians are smart, they're strategic. I think they can do very advanced calculations. And I think their conclusion would be that it wouldn't be worth the effort because it's not going to be successful. China is on a, competing at the top global level with the US, but China has a lot of other issues that is preoccupying. China has internal issues in terms of their economy, and they have a few restive areas as well. And I think that from a military perspective, they have done tremendous build-up and production of military capabilities. But I think that in terms of timing, they're looking more towards 2 or 3 years into the future when they will achieve some kind of parity with the US and when they won't be weaker than the US in terms of what they have. For China to go in to fight now on behalf of Iran, they have no religious ties, they have no social ties, it's just interests and economic ties. But for China to risk a lot of things by going into a war that is ongoing, which might trigger US involvement. I know that the Chinese are very careful and conservative in their use of force, and they are not, I don't think that they're very adventurous. They are aware of how dangerous war is. I don't see them doing that. It would be a very big surprise if the Chinese did. I also think that it would be a mistake for them. Just think about the logistics for the Chinese to be able to project force in that region. They don't really have the assets in terms of logistics and firepower to be able to project force and to sustain it in that area of the world. Sure, they can operate diplomatically, they can do things at the UN, but active participation in war fighting, I don't think so. And I think that as much as Iran would have wanted allies to come to its rescue, it's not going to happen, especially not since Israel was so successful in the first few days of the war.
Do you think Iran or do you think China or Russia could use diplomatic strategies? For example, China leveraging the tariff negotiations with the US to try to, twist the US's arm in ending the Israeli attacks on Iran, or at least trying to end the Israeli attacks on Iran, or Russia trying to leverage the peace negotiations when it comes to Ukraine. Could those play a role in what's happening in Iran?
Yeah, I think that they will. I think that what you say is correct. Those two countries, those two superpowers will try to do that. But I think at the end of the day, Iran is, the Islamic Republic of Iran is a country that causes a lot of trouble. I think the key here will be for the US to provide other solutions in terms of Iranian oil production and to ensure that China has access to oil that they need, which Iran won't be able to produce. I think that's Iran's main importance in Chinese eyes. About 10%, as far as I know, of Chinese consumption of oil comes from Iranian imports. That is important, and I think that is where the battle will be. Diplomatically speaking, yes, Russia and China have power and influence. They are big and strong countries. The US is stronger, and the US president, judging from what he's saying and doing, I think he's fully on Israel's side, and he's 100% on America's side. And I think that defeating Iran is an American interest, and therefore the US president will, I think, be pretty tough against any such efforts by the Chinese or the Russians.
What are your thoughts on Iran's military response so far? Most experts, I remember I was with former Marine Scott Ritter. We were doing an interview and the attack was happening live. And, in that interview, he said he expects to see a few waves, at least 2,000 missiles fired for Iran really to have a decisive impact on Israel. I think we saw about 200, 250 of them. Some of them have landed, so they were able to penetrate Israel's air defense system. However, many would see it as limited, and that includes the last two attacks. Do you think that was intentional by Iran because they do not want to escalate things whatever more they can be escalated. For example, for Israel to strike all of Iran's oil refineries. Or do you think this is their capabilities being eroded by Israel?
More the latter. Israel has focused its efforts on Iran's air defenses in order to allow itself operational freedom of movement in Iranian skies. That is what's happening now. Targets in Tehran are being attacked by Israeli Air Force at will. Nothing is safe for the Iranian regime, and it's a matter of an Israeli choice where to attack and where not to attack. And that is a very significant situation. Israel has also focused its efforts on the main bottlenecks and the bottlenecks of Iran's ability to fire rockets and missiles at Israel, specifically missiles. And Israel has taken out a substantial amount of the launchers. The launchers, at the end of the day, are the real bottleneck here. And yes, Iran has had thousands of missiles before the war started. Now they have significantly less, and they don't have access to many of those because Israel took certain measures to prevent access, and Israel has taken out a lot of the launchers. Sadly, we see that the Iranian weapons are still very potent. They've been able to kill Israeli civilians. They've been able to strike civilian locations in central, northern, and southern Israel and cause civilian deaths. They have not been able to inflict any significant damage on military infrastructure, on our air bases, on our ports, or anything else, and we know that they've tried. And in short, I would say that the Iranian response has been underwhelming. We did indeed expect more, and I think Israel is still anticipating Iran to try to do more. As we're speaking, after the Iranians, just a few hours ago, the Iranians fired a salvo of ballistic missiles and most likely also cruise missiles. And what Israel, of course, is doing in retaliation is locating those launchers, and then the next wave of Israeli strikes will be against those launchers, and that will degrade Iranian capabilities further. At the end of the day, I think after 2 days, soon 3 days of fighting, there is no parity between the Israeli situation and the Iranian situation. The Iranians were caught by surprise. Much of their military leadership was taken out. Much of their military infrastructure was taken out. Their air defenses have been decapacitated, and they are exposed and vulnerable. What they still retain is the ability to choose which way to go, if to escalate more or to de-escalate. And that's up to the Iranians. So far, it looks as if they are not willing to de-escalate, and they're trying to escalate and retaliate.
How can they de-escalate? Like, Iran, because I feel like they're in a position where I'm sure you agree, they have to defend themselves. They have to react somehow to show some sort of strength to their people. They're being attacked. If they want to escalate, I'd say they'd strike US bases.
Yeah, no,
not attack. But would you expect the country to just be struck and not attack? I think it's
so
the
cold. Yeah, but the cold strategic calculation is this: the Iranians know that Israel wants to take out their nuclear military program. And what Israel started striking was their nuclear military program. And I think that had the Iranians not retaliated against Israel and basically made a painful, very difficult decision not to retaliate, which they are entitled to. We are attacking them. The Iranians are entitled to retaliate. It's okay, but I'm discussing the wisdom of doing so. The wisdom, I think, isn't there. And when they choose to retaliate against Israel, what they're doing is that they're exposing themselves to additional Israeli strikes. And now Israel is expanding the targets that it is striking, not only nuclear, but more military. And as I said, Israel may go into striking other national infrastructure targets. Now, the Iranian option is for the Iranian regime, and I'll remind everybody, the Iranian regime is an oppressive, tyrannical regime. With all tyrannies, with all dictators, the number one enemy and the number one concern of every dictatorship is first and foremost the own population. And the Iranian regime knows that if they lose control, then they will be threatened by their own population. And what they could do here is they could have done that 2 days ago, basically to decide to forfeit and acknowledge that Israel is going to destroy their nuclear program, and then to try to contain it with that. Then what would have happened would probably have been if the Iranians had decided not to counterattack, Israel would have taken out and bombed their nuclear program, but it wouldn't have escalated beyond the nuclear. What's happening now is that since Iran decided to strike back, which again they are entitled to, I'm not talking about what's justified, just in terms of military logic, they're striking back, and Israel is doing more and thinking about other targets. So it's a question of wisdom, and eventually, what do the Iranians want to achieve? Do they think that they can achieve, that they can defeat Israel? After 2 days of fighting, they are throwing what they can at Israel. It's not really sticking, but Israel has freedom of movement in Iranian skies. Cold logic would dictate that the Iranians say, okay, you know what? Let's stop here, because things are only going to get worse for us. If they don't, then I think things will get worse for them.
Jonathan, the Iranian foreign minister said earlier today, we are defending ourselves. Our defense is entirely legitimate. This defense is our response to aggression. If the aggression stops, naturally, our responses will also stop. So 2 questions. Number one is, does that essentially mean that Iran is almost waving the white flag saying, look, keep striking us, we'll keep responding. When you stop striking us, we'll stop responding. This is the end of it. Number 2 is, if Iran does not respond as of today, no longer attacks Israel, will Israel stop? Because Netanyahu said this is a long-term campaign. And number 3 is, how far could Israel go? I think they already started striking the oil refineries. That they struck at least one. What other infrastructure could they strike? So it's a 3-part question. Is on the Iranian side, in terms of if they stop reacting now, what will Israel do, and how far Israel will go?
Yeah, I think that's a very typically dishonest Iranian statement, because the Iranians have been attacking, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been attacking Israel directly and indirectly for the better part of 25 years. They have built terror organizations, Hamas, first and foremost Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, multiple Iranian proxy organizations in Syria before the change of the regime, and Iranian proxies in Iraq. All of these organizations were funded and armed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and all of them were attacking Israel. So if we want to get history straight, Iran is the aggressor. Iran has been building terror organizations that have been attacking Israel, has been funding and arming them. So what Israel is doing is taking action against Iran in order to defend itself and to retaliate against Iranian attacks. And I'll remind everybody, Iran launched ballistic missiles towards Israel in April and in October of 2024. For the first time, they crossed that Rubicon. And I think ever since October last year, it was only really a matter of time before Israel would strike Iran and strike it hard. Now, second part of the question, I don't think that at this stage, if the Iranians stop firing, Israel will stop altogether. I think that Israel will seek to destroy their nuclear military program. If the Iranians stop firing now, specifically and especially if they stop firing at civilians, then I think Israel won't seek to escalate and won't seek to attack infrastructure, ports, oil refineries, gas refineries, and all of that infrastructure which is there. I don't think Israel will do that. But answering the last part of the question, Israel can today attack everything in Iran. It is a matter of choice. There is no single facility that is out of bounds of Israeli planes. And that's an understanding. It's a basic understanding that really is quite revolutionary. I think it's revolutionary for the Iranians to understand it. It's very important for them to understand it because the reality is different. It is no longer what it was before October 7, when an Iranian proxy attacked Israel, surprised us, killed many of our people, and took 251 Israelis hostage. It is not Israel surrounded by Iran's proxies that are deterring us from taking action against Iran. Reality is different. Iran is now on the receiving end. Israel is taking the initiative. Israel is part of a global coalition. Some partners are more brave and official. Some partners are a little bit less brave and not so keen to be out in the spotlight. But Israel is part of a coalition that is fighting Iran, and during the last 2.5 days, defeating Iran. So Iran has to make these calculations. And Israel, to finally answer the last part of your question, Israel can go all the way, as in national infrastructure, sites of governance, all of the locations. Israel has the ability to do so. But I'd emphasize that so far, if you look at the results on the ground in Iran, the strikes in Iran by Israel are surgical, emphasizing hitting military targets. The only non-military targets that have been hit are nuclear personnel and nuclear targets. Other than that, civilians are not getting injured. And, I know that you've covered the issue of, Gaza and the criticism against Israel for its use of force, the unfortunate killing of non-combatants in Gaza. Look at the difference here. And I suggest that everybody from here on look at the difference in the results on the ground and compare Iran to Lebanon and to Gaza. The difference here is that now, finally, Israel is fighting against a nation state. And this nation state does what usually nation states do. It doesn't hide mostly behind its civilians. It doesn't use the civilians as their human shield. That's what the Iranians, they're not doing that. Unlike Hamas, unlike Hezbollah, who do use civilians as their human shields. And as a consequence, there are lots of civilian casualties. Here in Iran, Israel is striking military targets. They are there, they're exposed, they're accessible, and Israel doesn't throw bombs at centers of population because we don't do that. We are striking military targets, and it's not a different IDF, it's not a different cabinet, it's not a different Israeli Air Force, and we don't have different bombs. It's the same people, but the difference here is that now Israel is fighting a nation state. And I think that all of the people who love to criticize Israel and have double or triple standards that are impossible to meet, look at what Israel is doing now and judge our morals and our use of force in this context and compare it to what's happening in Gaza. The only thing different is the Iranians so far are not hiding behind their civilians.
I think there's also an argument to be made that the destruction towards Hezbollah and Gaza, the objective was different. I think the objective in Iran is to weaken them militarily, but also destroy their nuclear program. In Hezbollah was to push back Hezbollah past the Litani River, and that meant to Israel entering Lebanon. And in Gaza, Israel is in Gaza, and we're trying to see what the objectives are there. So I think the objective differences between Iran and the other two regions could also be made as an argument on how the targeting was, along with the points you've made. I think both of them would be there, and would obviously, I'm sure people are going to debate it very extensively. But you did talk about the proxies, Houthis, Hamas, whatever's left with them, and Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah is really interesting. What surprised me is Hezbollah distancing themselves from this. The first thing I would have expected once Israel strikes Iran is for Hezbollah to respond, even before the Houthis. The Houthis responded even before Iran, but Hezbollah has been silent. Do you think Iran's influence over Hezbollah has been weakened, or do you think this is Hezbollah reeling back from the damage that Israel has caused them?
I think you are correctly describing one of the most important observations that are really key to how this can develop. I'd say that for 15-20 years, Hezbollah's mighty arsenal of rockets and missiles that they had stashed underneath civilians in Lebanon was a very potent deterrent against Israel for striking Iran. Hezbollah knew it, Israel knew it, and the Iranians knew it. The Iranians knew that Israel probably wasn't going to strike them because that would unleash massive amounts of rockets by Hezbollah towards Israel. That isn't the reality today, and I was relieved, but I was really surprised to hear the statement by Naim Qassem, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, who basically said in plain English, we're busy. We're busy elsewhere. We're not going to get involved here. and he didn't say this, but good luck to Iran. We're not going to get involved here, and that is nothing short of tremendous. And I think it's a result of the fact that Hezbollah were beaten by Israel, that their leadership, their command and control, most of their facilities, most of their weapons were taken out and degraded by Israel. Started with the Beeper operation, but it continued afterwards. And today, Hezbollah is the weakest it has ever been. By the way, before 2 nights ago, Iran was also the weakest. The Islamic Republic was also the weakest it has ever been. And today, it is even weaker. So this is indeed very, very important. You touch on probably one of the most important things that have changed since October 7. And when you look at things from an Iranian perspective, on October 7, Yahya Sinwar, the late leader of Hamas in Gaza, he rushed and he unleashed a war against Israel, which then the other Iranian proxies followed suit, some of them with more gusto, some of them with less. But at the end of the day, a year and a half after, the Iranian project of building a ring of fire around Israel is in ruins. And soon the Iranian regime itself may be exposed to really the consequences of their actions. And this is dramatic. This will change the Middle East for many, many years to come. This will change the balance of power in the Middle East. And I think many positive things will happen. I did a movie on my channel called The Bottom Line, where I speak about the chances for peace between Lebanon and Israel as a result of the strategic changes with Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I think that positive things can happen with Syria as well. All of this has been made possible by Israel's success on the battlefield, by minimizing Hezbollah, by brave Lebanese leadership deciding to take control over their country and exercise sovereignty. And I wish them best of luck with it. And by the Islamic Republic of Iran being pushed back. And that's what we're seeing now.
Do you think this is Hezbollah being weakened? What played a bigger role in Hezbollah's decision? Them being militarily weakened, or Iran's influence over Hezbollah being weakened? Especially seeing the success of that first day, the success by Israel on the first day against Iran, when Hezbollah saw all these different commanders, all the leadership of Iran, maybe the leadership that would give orders to Hezbollah being wiped out. Could that have played a bigger role than Hezbollah themselves being weakened? I'm sure both of them played a role. I'm just curious which one's more important. What I'm really curious about is, what is Iran's influence over Hezbollah today?
It's unclear what the influence is. I agree with you that it is diminishing. I too am surprised. There were times 4 or 5 years ago when I used to say, when Iran says jump, Hezbollah asks how high. That isn't the situation. Ever since Qasem Soleimani was eliminated by Trump or by US troops at the directive of President Trump, that changed the balance of power in the Iranian universe of terrorist organizations that they built. It elevated Hezbollah, and specifically, personally, the late Hassan Nasrallah, and he became the key, the elder statesman, the most important and influential part of the Iranian infrastructure and the Iranian network. And Hezbollah grew more and more powerful and less dependent on the Quds Force and on the Islamic Republic. It's important to emphasize, maybe one thing that can shed light on what's more important is, if you look at the last months in Lebanon and in Israel, Hezbollah has been violating the ceasefire by trying to approach southern Lebanon, by trying to place weapons, by trying to salvage weapons from southern Lebanon, and Israel has been striking. Israel has struck in Beirut, in Dahya 3 times. Israel has taken out at least 20 senior Hezbollah officials, Hezbollah commanders, since the ceasefire, and Hezbollah has not responded at all. Hezbollah has not fired a single rocket towards Israel, not because they've become Zionists or because they want peace with Israel, but because they have serious strategic issues. They have been weakened. So I would say that I think the local considerations of Hezbollah as a local Lebanese movement of Shiites which was, of course, the crown jewel in the empire of evil of the Iranians, and everything that they have is thanks to the Islamic Republic of Iran. But that has shifted because they've been really dealt severe blows by Israel. And since Syria fell and Bashar al-Assad is no longer in charge, and the new leadership is not welcoming Iranians, not allowing the Iranians to transport weapons through Syria to Lebanon, Hezbollah has a logistic issue because anything that they use today, they won't be able to replenish. They have no way of delivering weapons from Iran via Iraq and Syria because Syria isn't open. So if they fire a rocket, they don't have one anymore. And eventually logistics are very important in your planning and how you conduct operations. And I think Hezbollah is making a long-term decision. They're saying, okay, this is really bad, but we want to survive as a political entity in Lebanon, and therefore we're not going to jeopardize our existence here, because if we become involved, it might be the last thing we do. I think that is Hezbollah's consideration.
The last point I want to cover with you is the objective of Israel and whether Israel wants a regime change in Iran. But before that, a piece of news came out on Haaretz just a few minutes ago, about 10 minutes ago, that Israel leaders are reportedly putting some troops out of the Gaza Strip onto the borders with Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, just in case things heat up there. Israel says Hezbollah, Iran's armed group, isn't making moves to join the fight, but Israel is seriously nervous about other proxies in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. We're already seeing, obviously, Yemen involved. How big of a risk is that in terms of the other proxies or allies of Iran getting involved?
I think it's mostly a risk for them, the proxies. I know that this will sound perhaps overly confident, but I think this is a big risk for them. This is not a good time to be fighting for Iran. This is not a good time to pick a fight with Israel, and I would advise them against it. And of course, what Israel is doing is false projection, indicating to its enemies that we are prepared, we are ready, you're not going to take us by surprise like October 7. And if you do try to attack, there will be very severe consequences. So I think that's the context of it. Of course, there's good security cooperation between Israel and Jordan. And Israel is vigilant about what's happening in Jordan. Israel is deployed inside Syria. Israeli troops are deployed inside Syria and is vigilant about what's happening there as well. All of Israel is on high alert, obviously, for the last 2.5 days. But I think this is signals, and important signals to our enemies. Don't even think about it, because it would be a very damaging thing for you to do.
Last point I want to cover, Jonathan, is a regime change. Is that feasible in Iran? Is that one of the goals of Israel based on Netanyahu's latest speech? And could that have unintended consequences?
In short, I think it is. To be honest and pretty clear about it, I think Israel, I think that probably the US and secretly in closed doors, many European countries and many Arab countries in the region dream of the Iranian people rising up and ridding themselves of the oppression of the Islamic Republic. Not a lot has been done by various countries, except for Israel, about it, and nobody has really challenged the Iranian regime so far. But now Israel is. And, perceptions and the perception of strength is very important for dictatorships. And deterrence, that's very important. Today, the Islamic Republic is being exposed every hour that goes by as weak, inferior, incapable of defending itself, exposed and humiliated. And those are extremely dangerous notions for a tyrannical regime to see bubbling on the outside and inside of the country. So I think Israel would like to see that happen. I also think that Israel is fully aware of size and distance. Iran is close to 100 million people, 90-something million people. Israel is less than, or is about 10 million. And Iran is a vast country with significant resources, with a rich and beautiful history, with culture and many other beautiful things. And I think Israel is aware of the limitations of its own power. But I think Israel would see it very favorably if there were to be regime change in Iran. Why? Because it would be great. It would rid the biggest enemy that Israel has and the biggest source of instability in the region for the last 25 years. That has been Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran has spent so much money, so many resources, so much energy at killing Jews and undermining Israel and destabilizing Israel, and they have brought havoc to every place that they came, whether it's Yemen with the Houthis that are tearing Yemen apart, of course in Lebanon with Hezbollah that have been using Lebanon as a launch pad towards Israel and inflicting tremendous damage on Lebanon as a result. Their actions in Syria, their actions in Iraq, with the Gaza Strip, and also with Palestinians in what I call Judea and Samaria and what you probably would refer to as the West Bank. Wherever the Iranian regime went, they brought nothing but trouble, not progress, not development, not peace, not stability, but weapons, instability, extremism, fighting, and trouble, and eventually destruction. They have brought destruction on Gaza, on Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, and in Iraq, and now they are bringing destruction to their own country. So regime change, I think, would be a very good thing, first and foremost for the Iranian people and for the region and for Israel. I don't think that's an easy thing. The Iranian regime is brutal, organized, deeply entrenched in society, and they are now perhaps with their back against the wall, and they will fight for it. But I hope for millions of Iranians, I don't know millions of them, I've met a few thousands, who are out in the world, expatriates in Europe, Canada, US, Australia, and many other places. I know that they wish to go back home to their beautiful homeland, but they want to go back to a homeland that isn't under this Islamist rule of crazy ayatollahs and people who have no respect for human rights or for diversity or democracy or anything. And if it changes, I would be very happy. I would be happy for myself, for the region, and I'd be happy for Iranians.
Jonathan, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I hope you and your
Thank you,
family
Mario.
continue to be okay.
I have to say, Mario, your questions have been amongst the more intelligent questions that I've met in quite a while. And I think if people watch this interview, they will find it quite enlightening based on the questions and hopefully with the answers that I provided.
It's very kind of you. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Thank you.